All right. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting. My name is Mike Elliott. I am joined by fellow board members Emily McCormick and Dana Hipser. How you doing? Filling in for the superintendent is our assistant superintendent, Dr. Andrea Farina. Hi, Andrea. We have Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Kim Bast. Hi. We have Curriculum Supervisor, Sarah Rothermel.
Hello.
Hey, Sarah. And Director of Technology, James Rolfe. Okay, so we have an agenda we're going to talk about just in a second. The meeting goes till 7 o'clock when Pupil Services and Special Education takes over, so we do kind of have a hard stop, and if we get done a little bit before then, that's okay, because it's always nice to have a little bit of a break. So, with that being said, the first item on the agenda for tonight is the approval of the February 2022 meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Questions? I have a question. So first, it's a small thing, it's 2 T's, not 1.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Everybody.
Housekeeping thing. Unless, of course, it's in the paper, it's always 1 T.
Okay, I got
That's
that. And I got it there. I will make that change on
Cool.
all of my documents. I apologize.
Awesome, sweet. And then I just had a question. I know I wasn't here, I was away, and I apologize for not watching the video. But like in regards to like the item 6 thing, it looked to me like, you know, we're rolling out these curriculum changes, we're gonna review them and stuff like that, right? It says here with teachers to be identified, which to me means teachers are gonna be part of the whole process and picking and stuff like that.
So these are projects that have come about, not unexpectedly, but it's as a result of full day K.
Okay.
So we wrote curriculum, we're implementing it, and we're seeing a need for some dynamic review of that and some
Okay.
integration of the writing and the reading and all of the different phonics pieces.
Okay.
So these are teachers that I'm asking for participation
Cool.
to lead into the summertime before July 1, that we would try to get all of that done. So it's not the curriculum list of writers, which I'll bring to you probably in May. It was something that came up and we said, we need to do some extra work. It's not in the curriculum review cycle.
Like some tweaking and some.
Yes.
Okay, all right,
So
that
that's
makes
what
sense.
is. And our standards-based report card is in that project list as well.
Okay.
For kindergarten, and we'll roll those forward into grades 1 through 5 throughout the next school year.
Yeah, to create some cohesion
Yes.
throughout the program.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool. I like cohesion, that makes sense. Anybody else, any questions on the meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. All right, up next on the agenda is the Future Ready PA Index.
So every year, well, this is actually the first year in a few years that Pennsylvania has been able to update its Future Ready PA Index. It represents the report card for all public school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. And it has many measures. This was an improvement over just judging schools on Pssa and Keystone Exams. So there are multiple measures here in this Future Ready PA Index, and it gives the public, it gives folks a chance to take a look at, you know, how we've done in a particular area or two. So I will show this to you. The link is on the power slide that, or the PowerPoint slide that I had there for you. And I'll just start by going into some of our school district information. So there are, as I mentioned, multiple measures. And obviously, as you would expect, there are state assessment measures. These are usually Pssa and Keystone Exams. Those are the state assessments.
Okay.
On-track measures. They really truly believe that if you are reading on grade level in 3rd grade and performing strong in mathematics in 7th grade, you're going to be on track to be successful. So they have highlighted on-track measures for English language growth in 3rd grade and mathematics in 7th grade. That can either be the Pssa exam or it could be something like the MAP test that we use as our benchmark. And then they also thought that it was important to track college and career ready measures. So I'll go into each one of these. This is the 4-5. What's interesting about the 4-5 is the last time this was calculated with updated data, the 4-5 did not exist. So this is the baseline year for the 4-5 center. And Dr. Farina and I looked at all of this data before it was released. We had to go through a check and make sure everything was correct. We had some questions because some of it looked strange after 3 years of not having it. So let me show you what this looks like. And you could go into these for every single school. You can look at Marlboro, Hereford, 4-5, middle school, high school, and check and see how things are doing. So they show you the regular achievement measure here at the top. So on these top ones, you can take a look at 4-5, how many students were proficient or advanced in ELA, math, and science. The science PSSA is given in 4th and 8th grade only. So we have 54.6 students proficient or advanced in 4th grade in science. State average is 55. Then we have, in terms of mathematics, in the whole building, 4-5, 36.9% proficient. Again, a little bit lower than the statewide average. And then when we look at science and biology, this tends to be a strength area for the district. Our Keystone exams are usually the highest in that area of the 3 that we give. Down here it shows you what kind of growth happened from previous years. Now, as I stated, the 4-5 was not a building when this was last updated, so they don't have any growth data for us. It actually lives in both Marlboro and Hereford, so it's really hard to pull that out because what you see here is building level data. You don't see individual grade data. When we do our data reporting for you, we do pull out every grade level for you to take a look at. So those are the things, and then they also like to give a little extra bonus points for those who score advanced on any of these assessments. And you can see what percentage of Upper Park students in the 4-5 center perform advanced on those. So I will say to you, we obviously see areas of improvement. We know we've needed to see those scores rise, and so we're attacking that through tightening up our curriculum, tightening up our assessments, a stronger assessment portfolio. We showed you last month some of that benchmark data that we look at. And so we continue to do that, checking to make sure our assessments are as rigorous and aligned to the state standards as they can be. So these really become predictive measures. We know where kids are struggling and we can intervene. The entire MTSS process is designed to do just that. As we worked on our comprehensive plan this morning, Dr. Farina and I, we looked again at these numbers and we said we have so much room to grow. We're really proud of the growth our teachers have made, the growth our students have made. We believe with professional development and just a continued attention to assessment and curriculum alignment that we're going to be moving in the right direction. Would you add anything from our work this morning?
No, I think that what is difficult is just the context of which kids took the assessment. And sort of where they've been. This data is very difficult to absorb for those of us who've been working over the years to attend to the matter. It almost feels like you make all this progress and then wham, you have a pandemic and we're all trying to figure out how to. We talked about learning loss and making up for all of that fractured instruction. And so, it's a little disheartening being here now for 8 years, knowing all the work, and then we get to a point where we feel good, and then we're out of school. Yeah. And so I hate to say it, and I'm guilty of it, I say COVID's like the next best excuse, but it is reality.
In fact, PDE sent home a letter. We send home student results to families, and they attached a letter with all of the data this year and said, please take this in the context in which these students took this test. And some of our students took it this fall, not our students, but some school districts around the state had their students finish up in September of this year. So the statewide data, everything is just a little bit skewed in terms of what really happened. They extended the test window to September 15th of this year. And so there were school districts who chose to do that.
Do you think that would be, obviously kids would lose stuff over the summer, but do you think that would be beneficial because?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
We were very concerned about getting it in and done and not bringing our kids back to our first potential normal year and testing them right away. We did not want to do that, so I'm not sure.
There's those state tests you love so much.
Yeah, right.
And they have to make some concessions because there are some school districts that never came back face to face. Some of those schools were like, whoop.
The participation numbers were really low. Amy was just sharing a statistic, Amy Hartzell, with me, that the participation dropped from 90-some% to 70-some%. So we had a lot of students who opted out of the tests.
Really?
Yeah. We had a lot more than normal, and I know that was obviously the case around the state if we dropped almost 20 percentage points in participation. in the PSSAs.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. So when you take a look at this website, and it is really good, you can compare different schools. I wouldn't recommend doing that for a number of different reasons, just because of the context that we just gave you. And I mean, I think there will be a time for that. They from the front page here, they like to show you too, okay, where did you land here? So this is, you did really, really well, you're advanced, this is you're right on par, and this is you're lacking in particular areas. If it's not filled in, it's because there potentially was no growth data to have that in there, so none of these are indicated there. You can take a look here that on track measures for math, I don't even know, yeah, that would have been math, because we did have 4th to 5th grade. That looks good there. So let me show you what this page looks like. So this is, that's why we were able to do it. So when we look at attendance, okay, regular attendance, they know impacts an on-track measure. So we were really high in terms of the percentage of attendance rate in our school districts. We didn't have this growth data because we didn't give the test. They didn't carry it forward. And then this would have been, again, that 3rd grade reading score. Okay, so they didn't have a growth measure to share with us there, but they did share the statewide average. The other piece that they feel is really important in measuring a school's success is college and career awareness. So you all were very helpful in helping us adopt Smart Futures as our tracking mechanism for student engagement and participation in college and career readiness. And you'll see, I mean, we had some folks at the 4-5 Center who just worked diligently. That's almost 100% of 5th grade students participated in 6 different evidence-based activities to try to figure out what they want to do later in life, based on interest inventories, based on some research of different careers, all built into that Smart Futures platform.
What's the difference between and maybe the statewide average and the statewide performance
The
standard?
performance standard is where you should be. So they set targets for years, you know.
This is where we want you to
hit
get.
this, yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
So, and I don't even think that's quite yet, but that's where you
That's
should be in a.
30,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like your, is it 30? Or 2030?
2030?
2030,
Yes,
yeah, so
yeah.
what they did is when they set that
Yeah.
standard, they mapped out till 2030 and took the years and divided, like, so they set it for then, and then divided across the years from where you started to know what your rate of growth should be.
Wow.
I mean, it was quite a fascinating formula.
And
Wow.
so that's a great question. It's here's where you should be, and you can see that we're already there. We hope we would maintain that, so
Yeah.
that's good.
So
So
not
the
30-20. Is that what I heard?
I
was like-
I knew what you meant though.
Yeah.
I knew, I heard the
That
2030.
doesn't sound right.
So they also give you lots of information here. Here's what, again, I tried to tell you what those numbers meant. Here's what the arrows next to them might mean. There's a lot of information in here. You can go and see things about the district. This is demographic information that you might want to learn. So you can get that about our school district, and you can also get that about the 4-5 Center. So it's a really robust platform. It hasn't been updated with new data in 2 years because there wasn't any data to do either achievement one year and growth the following.
Is the layout new though?
No, I mean, years ago, what they gave us was an SPP score, a school
Yeah.
performance profile. That has been dead now for a couple of years. This is their new replacement. They heard from a lot of stakeholders that they didn't think it was fair to give an SPP score strictly on test results, because as we pointed out to you last month, this is one measure of how our students are doing. This is
Right.
one singular measure. We do DIBELS, and we do F&P, and we do MAP testing, and we do curriculum-based assessments and diagnostics, so that we get a full picture of where the student is. That's the other reason you never want to take these and get upset or nervous. We do take it very seriously, and we do a lot of planning around it, but it's one measure amongst many where we check student performance and growth.
Okay.
So they'll take them this year in April,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And how soon before the results come again?
It's July.
July,
Mhm.
okay.
And I have actually a slide on that, so I'll talk a little bit about it. Yeah, just trying to give you some upcoming. I don't have anything that I need to take forward for voting, but there were a lot of informational items to share this month. So that is the information about the Future Ready PA Index. I do think I think in a couple of years when it's kind of realistic again and we have some measurable growth data, it'll be much more informative. Right now, I feel like it's just a little like going into a haunted house. You just don't know what you're going to find, and you don't necessarily know why it looks the way that it does. There were so many different factors at play. So in the slide deck that I'll include in the notes, you have a link to get there, and this tells you a little bit about what that is. Can I answer any other questions about Future Ready?
Guys, good? Okay, should we, are we done with Future Ready? Moving on to professional development? Okay, professional development stuff.
So as we do every month, we come together and let you know what's upcoming. And so tomorrow afternoon, we're looking forward to a great afternoon of learning. We have the MCIU back in to support our K-3 teachers and supporting all students. We have our TLS group coming in, Teaching, Learning, and Succeeding, who's been working with us all year to work again at the 4-5, as well as our cohorts at 6 through 12. This is their celebration day. They won't see them again this school year. And there has been so much growth, there's been so much positive feedback about the learning that's happening, the collaborating that's happening between our teachers in 4th through 12th grade. And so we're really excited to let them come together and brag on themselves a little bit, share their best practices, and think forward to next year. This isn't a group that disappears. This is a group that will come back, we hope, pending budget approval, that they would come back and continue to work with our teachers. And the reason we think it's been so successful is the quality of the professional development as well as the follow-up coaching. They provide coaches, they're outside individuals who come in. It's very non-threatening when it's a non-district person, and it really allows the opportunity for teacher growth and vulnerability.
And where are they all from again? Like,
Montgomery County. They're from all over Montgomery County. Crystal Lay, who's in the community, is one of the facilitators.
yeah.
She works at the high school with that group.
Okay.
And there are a few others. Julie Klein was a previous superintendent. She works at the 4-5 center with that crew.
Okay.
So they really come from all over Montgomery County.
Okay.
I would say probably even maybe Delaware County, but I don't want to say for sure.
Okay.
Most of the ones I know are from Montgomery County.
Okay.
And so for 6 through 12, we had over the past 2 times given them that menu of options that they could choose from. We felt this time that a lot of the teachers who could get to those had already seen the ones that they could see. Additionally, there was some academic work just kind of pounding on the door saying we need a little bit of time for this. So for the groups that have been doing TLS, they will continue with that, their celebration day. The rest of the groups, because a lot of them are on curriculum review, a lot of them are really digging into their assessments, as we just mentioned with the PA Future Ready information. They're going to be collaborating together. We've given them some specific activities to do. We've given them a sheet to let us know kind of where they ended up and what resources they need and what were they able to accomplish so that we can follow up after that.
Just in that day or throughout the year?
That's just for tomorrow afternoon.
for
We just
tomorrow,
want to know,
right.
okay, what'd you talk about? Where are you? What do you
Okay.
need from us right now?
Okay.
That's a Google form that they'll complete at the end of that day. And then we have our special education teachers, and not our counselors, just our special education teachers doing a deep dive into Act 158, which is the state's new graduation requirement system, which I believe we talked about. Yeah, we had the
Yeah,
handouts
like
here.
2
when
weeks
I-
ago, or 2 meetings ago, right?
Yeah, it will be important that our special education teachers have a full understanding of that as they think about secondary transitions. I'll let you speak more to that if you
Yeah,
want
so
to.
ultimately, as you remember from the past, Louise, if you are not proficient in the Keystone, and you're in the Western Center, that's one vehicle.
Yep.
It's our learning support population, who is not enrolled in a Western Center, who likely will need to have some very specific plans built to their transition grid in their IEPs in order for them to successfully navigate that alternative pathway. So, this has been discussed, but the special ed teachers really need to understand what those options are, need to begin communicating with families, developing plans in middle school for kids
Yeah.
as they transition to high school. So there's some easy and successful strategies we can deploy. Everybody just needs to know what they are.
Yeah.
Taking financial literacy, personal finance is the course we offer. Making sure every kid has that course and is successful in it. That is a dual enrollment course. That is something that satisfies one of the components of alternative pathways. So, we're just trying to gear them up, even as early as 7th and 8th grade, in order to make a transition to ensure, our population who is most at risk really does have the best trajectory to graduate.
And I think we mentioned the last time that we'll be tracking all of that for all of our students in the Linkit system. They've been great and very responsive, so that's one less thing to worry about. Sarah's been great in helping them pull that together. The other 2 days, the rest of our in-service days for this year, which is crazy to think about, April 8th is another 3-hour early dismissal. And we'll be giving teachers time to do an online certification that they must do annually to proctor Pssa exams. So they all have to do that, they all have to pass. So we're giving them time to do that. There will be some transition meetings between buildings. As kids are going to be moving from different buildings, we have time for teachers to meet and discuss issues, IEPs, all sorts of things that might help the student as they're moving forward.
In regards to individual students?
Yeah, in a lot of instances, it's talking about, okay, so here are, if we need to set up anything with like visual or hearing type of things going on to the next school year.
Right.
So they do talk a little bit about individual students in
Like,
transition.
might have specific learning disabilities.
Yeah, not like, you don't want this kid in class, none of that. Yeah,
Well, no, that's what I figured. That's what I figured.
we never do that. So that's a really nice time. We were able to do that last year for a lot of years, but giving them time on an in-service day really makes it a little bit more palatable for all the things they need to talk about.
Okay.
And then on May 17th, we were so excited that the entire district will be participating. Well, we'll be cheering.
Celebrating.
We'll be celebrating together for the Special Olympics. So we'll all be here at the high school, on the track, off the track in the bleachers, supporting the Special Olympics. Those of us that got to be there last year, it was so awesome.
Okay.
So we really think it's a great opportunity to bring everybody together and kind of showcase how
So
hard
like
district
all the
works.
staff comes out for that?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what building you're
Yeah.
at, this is where you are today?
Yeah, and there's T-shirts for sale. I'll put the link in here when I send this out to you. I already ordered
Oh,
mine.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're really cool. They're white,
Yeah.
long sleeve or short sleeve. Really, really neat T-shirts.
Do you have any other color? I'm kind of messy sometimes.
No, I was kind of like, I don't do white well, so yeah, but they're really nice.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon, we'll do some more transition meetings. We'll do the rollout of some curriculum documents. There'll be some time. We have some, pass this around. We're hoping to get some time where we can log into the IU and, of course, I can't find it here. There's a couple of online virtual opportunities. It says Teach Happier. So it's really nice. Here it is, Teach Happier. It's SEL opportunities for teachers. The IU's putting it on. I think it would be a really nice acknowledgement of the hard work that they've done. You can see I have an asterisk next to the 1 o'clock
Yeah.
one. We're hoping they can get there and watch that. The other two are either when we're at Special Olympics or, people can stay the extra half hour. I'm not sure how many will. But we want to be able to offer that to them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she's fairly local. She's out of Bucks County. Lots of rave reviews for the workshops that she does with teachers, kind of acknowledging where they've been, especially after a year like this one, and sending them off with some kudos.
What kind of obviously the last, talking about the impact of that, but like, when we do things like that, like this is gonna run a little long, what's the turnout like?
I don't know. I truthfully,
Do
I can
we
tell you
not
after
normally
that.
do stuff like
No,
that?
we
So-
normally
Yeah.
confine to the
Yeah.
time we are allotted.
And
Okay.
truthfully, I wouldn't judge anybody if they don't stay. That one that's later in the day, is that the SEL one, Emily's, you're looking at that?
Yes.
We've done a lot with them this year for SEL, so
We
they
have,
may
yeah.
not feel the need to stay for that one. They may
Yeah.
not feel like they have that particular need. So we'll fill the other gaps with either some curriculum integration or some of the other workshops that we offered in February. But we think that'll be a night, I think that would be a great day. If I was a teacher, I would be so excited to go to Special
That sounds
Olympics
cool.
and then potentially watch something like that and or work with my colleagues.
That's, a special things.
Mhm.
And you're outside cheering,
I
hopefully
do
it's a nice
think
day.
too, the next time we do the polar plunge and Dr. Farina jumps in, we should bring the whole district around for that.
I'm still recovering.
You did it though. We have the video, you did it.
I think my heart stopped. I really did.
It was cool. So that's the information about in-service. Can we answer any questions about that? We're already deeply into planning for next year too. It's laughable, but we have almost the whole calendar mapped out for next year. In
Really?
terms of the mandated things that need to happen, those come around every year. Continuing the initiatives with TLS and supporting our learners with MCIU, professional development. So restorative practice, responsive classroom, we have all of it. There's so much jockeying for so little time. And we're all collegial about it, but we have certain things within the comprehensive plan that we are set out, we're setting out to try to accomplish, so.
Right. when we talk about the collaboration, or do you guys have any questions? Okay. When we talk about the collaboration between the departments and, talk about instruction and curriculum, I mean, obviously, we all know we're trying to get kids to pass the assessments and stuff like that. But is there a lot of obviously, I would think, a lot of best practices. Is there any tweaks to anything, or how exactly?
Yeah, so basically the design for this afternoon, there are many subject areas in curriculum review right now, and sometimes it's one or two people in that grade level writing, so the other ones don't really have an idea of what will change for next year. So we've been trying to say to them, here's the work I've been doing, let's get some feedback, let's get some input while it's still March. Do we want to change some novels?
Why the hell are you doing that,
Right.
sort of thing?
Well, right, yeah, nicer, but yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So, do we want to change a novel? Do we want to change the order of units? And teachers are really very thoughtful when it comes to that,
Okay.
but they're also very vulnerable because they're writing something that they're going to show to their colleagues and be like, here, now do this.
Oh, and if someone responds like that, that would be terrible.
So we want to give groups the opportunity to say, here's where we're headed, here's what we're thinking, and get that feedback and that input. And I find that if you can talk about things early and often, it isn't so much a shock to the system, and everybody feels as though they are a part of it, because then they really are a part of it.
Well, yeah, everybody's going to be more on board,
And even for those that wrote last year, there are some things, full day K, for example, and not that they're getting together, but as you live this, it's like, that didn't work. Okay, that worked, that didn't. So that's one of the needs for the summer projects. Because it's a living, breathing document. Curriculum is never done. As you try things, I always tell my teachers, teach with Post-it notes. I don't know if that's old-fashioned or not, because you won't remember a week from now what worked, what didn't work, and what you might want to tweak. So that's an opportunity to come together. There'll also be some conversation between middle school and high school math, which is critically important for vertical articulation of skills and standards and assessments. So
Yeah.
it'll be good.
Cool.
And our art K-12 are getting together, our PE, our library K-12 are having some time.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and so I think that they don't get enough time like that, so we're really excited to be able to give that to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay.
And we know Arts Fest is coming up, so they have
Yep.
some time to talk and play a little bit for that.
Okay. So anything else on the in-service activities? Anyone? Okay, moving right along, update on the library book review requests.
Go ahead.
You want me to take this?
Yep.
Okay, so as you'll recall, over the holiday, we received challenges on 4 books, which we began that process when we got back from vacation, winter break. But ultimately, pursuant to policy 109, the committee did follow the procedure in that they did meet with the complainant, and that was the opportunity to discuss those concerns and then give them an opportunity to decide whether they wanted us to pursue the investigation or not. The complainant did determine that they would like us to continue with the challenge, and so committees were gathered, two different committees.
Okay.
Actually, there's a committee for each.
Okay.
Because this is a new, remember, we just adopted this. So we did, it was requested, and I was able to grant, as I mentioned in the last meeting, that they be split, the timeline be split, because remember, the building principal's the chair.
Yeah.
So 4 at one time, so we split them in 2. We have completed 2 of those book reviews, Out of Darkness and The Bluest Side. The findings of that committee pursuant to policy are that both of those selections would be maintained in the library without restriction.
Okay.
So the complainant alleged child exploitation as the reason for removing that, and it does not really meet the criminal statute. So the committee reported to me, and this is respective to both books, it does not meet criminal statute for child exploitation. It is a novel. It does, each one, the committees found, had a very unique perspective that explores the notion of racism through varying cultural lenses. Extracting some of that content changes the intent and purpose of the writer. And we do acknowledge the sensitivity of those certain pages or sections. In totality, though, we believe that there was educational benefit for those novels to remain in our collection unrestricted. A couple of things that did emerge, and I do want to remind anyone is that parents who have children in the buildings have unrestricted access to see the novels that their children are checking out, whether they be ebooks or actual hard copy books. And so we encourage all parents, if they observe something, or even if they are interested in seeing what their children are checking out, to log in. And should they find something, please contact the librarian immediately, who will either, stop the ebook so they can't have it continued access, and/or they'll collect that novel back. And so we respect parents' opinions of a resource in our library. We honor those requests, and we can facilitate those per individual student should we hear from, any parent. The other piece of that is the complainant had also discussed some concerns about access from younger children into our young adult literature. Through that comment, truthfully, we were able to investigate, and yes, in fact, there was some unfiltered access. So we did make sure there were logins. So right now, if you're in elementary school, you can't access the high school collection.
Okay.
And so we did create some of those filters. But now you have to log in. And if you don't have children, you can't freely log into the Carrot Catalog. It is a student resources. We pay for it per pupil. It is for students who go to the district.
Right.
So it did create a little bit of that barrier. So Kathy Saddle did communicate it out to teachers to remind. I'm not sure. We could have done a much better job of probably communicating that change happened. But I want the board to know that was one of the outgrowths of looking into some of the concerns that the parents shared with us. So we do have 2 other books. As you can see, Beyond Magenta and All Boys Aren't Blue. Those committees are meeting today.
Okay.
They will be forwarding their findings, and then my obligation is to summarize those in the form of a letter or email to the complainant by next Friday. And so I do know those committees were convening this week. I don't have the outcome of those committee results, but.
That's understandable. I mean, we're already asking them to take on some extra tasks and read extra books and do a lot of extra work with everything that we're trying to do. And I think we're trying to proceed with everything in a very timely manner as best we can. And I think that's the best that you can do. So, in a good way. So thank you to you and everyone else who's been a part of that to get that figured out and to go through this process. Do any committee members have any questions?
I just want to say I'm pleased with the results. I'm pleased with not only, the way in which we did it, but also I think it's really important to note and for us to make sure that we echo in as many places as possible that parents have complete control over this. They always have, and they will continue to do so. So, I think that's really an important piece of it. If there is information that people don't want their children to be reading, that is up to the parent to be able to do that. But for those that, want to allow their children to have exposure to all kinds of different viewpoints, then that is available as well. So I think the committee, I think the committee made the right choice.
I'm impressed by how seriously you took the petition and how quickly you came to a conclusion. And grateful to the people who took the time and were part of the committees to complete the task.
And those committees were very diverse in composition. There were administrators, there were mental health support professionals,
Okay.
there were classroom teachers, there were special area teachers, because the concerns sort of bridged some of that content versus trauma versus, so we wanted to make sure it was holistic, and 20 professionals across the district agreed to the commitment of time to do this work. And so I commend them too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. All right, let's move on to upcoming events.
So we are starting state assessment season, which is not a joyful time. or those preparing, or those taking them. But we do understand that it is a necessary part of accountability as a public school system. So we are truly very fully invested in the integrity of PSSA and Keystone testing. I put the dates up here for you on the agenda. There's an actual link you can click on. If you want to read more about it from the state website, you certainly can do that. But PSSA tests will be administered between April 25th and 29th for ELA. That happens in grades 3 through 8. Mathematics will be the 2nd through the 13th in grades 3 through 8. And science, as I mentioned earlier, is grade 4 and 8 only. So we've identified with the principals exactly when those exams will be given. We've turned those dates into the state because they can come and monitor at any time. And we have to be ready with 3 years worth of documentation. When you prepare for something like PSSAs and Keystone, there's an arduous process of the district assessment coordinator, which is me, taking an online assessment, and then every school assessment coordinator, including me, takes another assessment online to make sure we know how to do this, and then every teacher who will proctor or be a test administrator, as we mentioned on April 8th, will take that online piece. Then I turn around training to the administrators because there's additional things that I watch. I have a whole Google folder full of things that we share every year. It's really important. We have to keep track of agendas. We have to have sign-in sheets. We have to have a very clear PowerPoint presentation about what is the expectation at every level of person in the building. There are certifications that have to be signed. If you so much as look at the box, closed and sealed, you have to sign a general certification that says you didn't dig in. The tests are locked and we have to go through and count them, and that's done at the school level. I take no credit for all of that work. But the time that it takes to go through all of those tests, check them in, organize them to be delivered to every single classroom with pencils and erasers and rulers and calculators in some instances, it's a big task.
Yeah.
So I applaud everybody who does that. And so when I say it's not a joyful time, it's a lot of work. It's not a high pressure situation. Teachers are really good at letting students know this is an opportunity to show what you know. This is not the do all, end all, be all, because we don't use it as the single measure of how we see how students are doing. And so there's a lot of preparation in the buildings, taking down things that might have letters or numbers. So it's a really interesting time. So we're in the thick right now of that preparation. I've been watching my webinars, putting together my Google folders, putting together the big binder in case I get monitored for PSSAs and Keystones. And so we do that training. For my turnaround training will be March 29th or 30th to everybody.
Okay.
The April 8th will be when everybody takes the online certification. So we are more than ready to go because then the principals have to take my training back to their buildings.
Okay.
So we've timed it really well so that we'll be all ready for the state assessments. We'll start to get them in soon. And there's a lot of time given for unpackaging and counting and then rearranging to go out to classrooms. The same type of process occurs with Keystone Exams. Todd Amsler and I from the high school will start on Monday with a lovely meeting where we have to do some clicking and make sure we have exactly the right students taking Keystone Algebra 1, Keystone Bio, Keystone Lit. We sent all that information in through PIMS, but we have to make sure and do the final accounting for every student. So that will be fun. Same process occurs, ship to school, unpack, count out, and they all have to figure out who's testing when and where and who the proctors are. So it's no small task. I say that to be gentle with both teachers and administrators once this starts because it's the main thing on people's minds. And so those two pieces are coming up now. I know Amy does a lot of preparation for our Pssa exams as well. I'm not discounting that. I'm just simply not in charge of it, so I didn't put it here. And I actually think that takes place in February and March. So I think we're closing out on that window. The last thing I wanted to tell you about, because it hasn't come up again in 3 years, is something called Pvas roster verification. So a few years ago, the state changed the accounting system for teachers. They came up with what was called Act 82, which they just recently changed to Act 13. And we've been doing a lot of training on that the whole front of the end of the year and summertime, which we didn't know about. It was like when we were in COVID, they were doing all this plotting and planning. And they said here, we went, oh. But what Pvas roster verification means is that for every teacher that teaches a Keystone course or a PSSA grade level, so all our teachers 3 through 5 are involved in Pvas roster verification.
Okay.
Actually, I should say 3 through 8 are involved because they all give that. And what Pvas does is it's a Pennsylvania value added something system. It's 2 S's, not 2 A. It's 2 A's, not 2 S's, so you have to be careful when you write that out. But what it does is it tries to give accounting to the teacher that taught the student how much growth that student made. So in the state of Pennsylvania, teachers are expected to have students grow, it's 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. That's an expectation that we also agree with, that we hope that happens.
Right.
Sometimes we grow much more than that. And so there is a baseline measure. So what will happen this year is we'll start over with a baseline measure for all of these teachers who teach either a Keystone course or a PSSA grade level. And they will look at their students' achievement score. Next year, they're going to see how much those students grew. So it's a 3-year rolling average of how they did across 3 years worth of student data. So I had these kids, here's how they did. I had these kids, here's how they did. I had these kids, here's how they did. So that 3-year rolling average of how well the student did becomes part of a teacher evaluation. That won't happen for our teachers for another 3 years because this is our baseline year due to COVID.
So if the child has me, then Dana, then Emily, once they're done with Emily, then they see how they did.
Well, you're only measured on your kids 1 year, your kids the next year, your kids the next year.
Oh,
Dana's measured on his kids for 3 years, Emily's measured on her kids for 3
Okay.
years.
So let's say you try something new in year 1, and you're like, this is gonna go really well, and then you get to year 3, and you're like, I don't think it'll go well at all, but this is your time that you're gonna be able to say,
Okay.
I mean, is that,
Basically, and
You
So
have-
basically, it's just,
And you have to have the same content,
Yes.
like, so if
Right.
you're switching around, then you kind of.
then you start your average all over again.
over.
But what roster verification means is I'm Dana, and I have a class that I taught this year.
Okay.
And I'm saying I was the only teacher who taught these kids all year long, and I taught them every day. So that means Dana didn't go out for maternity leave, Dana didn't go out on sabbatical, Dana didn't, or he didn't have a co-teacher in his room.
okay.
Because if he had a co-teacher in his room, then they share responsibility at 50%. So every teacher will have to go through their list of students and ensure that we have the right instructional responsibility, which is how responsible I am for them. If I'm the only teacher, it's 100%. If I'm one of 2 teachers, it's 50%. The second column of roster verification, when you're looking at instructional responsibilities, how many days did we share together? What percentage of time did we share together? So had Dana gone out on maternity leave or the student enrolled late or withdrew, that won't be 100% of the year. It'll be the percent of the year they spent with you. If, for whatever reason, those 2 things don't come up right, and I have to tell you, there's a lot of reasons why those things don't come up right. Amy Hartzell is a lifesaver. She and I spent several hours in conference rooms trying to look at the initial reports and go, well, why did that happen? And how does that look that way? So we had to go back into Skyward, and we have some recommendations for next year. So the whole process is that we get all that ready so that it goes up to PIMS correctly. Some things we can't fix. So if you take a look at that window, April 27th to May 6th, I'll get a look at what it looks like. After all the changes Amy and I made, I want to get in there because before teachers look at it, I want to make sure it's right. I really don't want them to have to struggle and worry, so we'll even meet, Andrea and I have meetings set next week or the week after with every principal to say, here's what this is, you look at it with me, because by the time the teacher opens it, we want them to be like, yes, done, no problem. Because if not, it could take a lot of time that we don't have to give to them.
Right.
So we look at it first, then we let the teachers look at it, then the principals have to verify what they did, and then it comes to me.
Okay.
If at any point in time after the teacher does it, if the school admin makes a change, the teacher gets an email. So we're not being, not that we would ever do that, but there's a check in place.
Right.
And then if I were to make a change after the principal did it, you can see that that's in there, and there's a record of that. So we're doing our very best to get it right now, so that when it comes time for it to affect a teacher evaluation, everything's been done and everything is correct and above board.
Is it kind of like on the back of a baseball card, looking at my batting average over the
Yes.
past couple of years?
Yes.
Same
So I
thing,
wouldn't
right?
judge you on a player on 1 year. I would look across 3 years.
3 years
So
and
I'm
see what
really
my-
good, maybe 5.
Okay. All right. No, that's cool. No, that makes sense.
I'm also looking at your on-base percentage and your slugging percentage. There's a lot we're looking at.
No, I like that. No, I think that would be beneficial to you guys to kind of see where like, yeah, like
Yes.
Dana is crushing.
Not just average.
Yeah, not just average, yeah, advanced analytics.
Yeah. Advanced.
The hot hand theory is true. No,
So
but I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah. I share this with you just so that you're aware of what season we're in, you know, public schools. It's
No, this is
assessment
cool.
and accountability
Yeah.
season. It's always some season.
My kids are a long time out of school. Can we backtrack on the PSSA? That, they're all-day affair?
No, so that's a really good question.
I'm just trying to
It's a really good question.
why 30% of our parents opt their kids out.
So the only allowable opt-out for the state of Pennsylvania is a religious opt-out. Now, when we get a call or an email from a parent that says, I would like to opt my child out, we tell them the only acceptable reason, we meet with them, there's a process to go through to preview the book, to still say, yes, I want to be opted out, and then we go through that process. We have no more than 2 testing periods within a day. Most of the time, they're a 2-hour block of time where we're scheduling for a module, so it'll just be the morning. No, there's no PSSA testing in the afternoon in any of the schools. When I submitted it, it's all in the morning. So we schedule an ELA one day for 2 hours, and ELA the next day for 2 hours, then math, then science. So it's 2 and 2 and 1. And then for the Keystones, there's 2 modules for Algebra 1, there's 2 for Bio, and there's 2 for Literature. And then there's time for makeups.
Okay.
So it doesn't take all day, it's a half a
I
day.
didn't mishear. It is 30% of our kids don't do it?
I didn't, that wasn't accurate for us. When I talked about the state participation, went from 90 to 70%-ish. It was somewhere in the 90s to somewhere in the 70s. And I can get that for you. I will tell you that we did have a number of families opt out last year. We were busy. We were busy in those meetings. And I think, I won't project, let me just have one. I won't even
Okay.
think about it.
Cool.
So I wanted to let you know what this was, that these things will be happening, and I also on the agenda, I put links. If you ever want to learn more, you can go right to this source. It'll actually tell you how many questions are on each section of the PSSA, how long you should prepare, and give children to do that. There is no time limit on the PSSAs. If a child needs extra time, they get extra time, whether they have an IEP or whether they don't. Everybody gets as much time as they need to take the PSSA. We do kind of say a child's eyes have glazed over and they're not going to do any better today. Wouldn't make them keep at it.
Yeah.
So that's that. I don't know. Oh, just questions in our next meeting.
Okay. So, any questions on first the state assessment or Pvas roster verification?
Very helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Mrs. McGinnis, do you have a question? Any school board members in attendance have a question?
I just have a quick question. Are we considering transitioning to the online PSSA yet, since we are 1-to-1?
I have very strong reservations about going online. There's an awful lot of tech set up. There's an awful lot that can go wrong. The state is really pushing schools to go in that direction.
Right,
I
that's
think
right.
eventually we might not have an option, but I've watched our students during the pandemic try to do math on a computer and try to show their work on a computer, and I don't think it's a true representation of their knowledge, and so we want to see them with paper and pencil. We want to see them working things out, and so you can see their thinking on paper. I don't know that the systems that they have created are really efficient for that right now, and they're going to drag me kicking and screaming to online, unless directed otherwise. That's just how Kim feels. I don't know how.
Yeah, and I think we made some transition to using Linkit online tests, and there have been some hiccups and reservations from our math teachers in
Yeah.
particular that kids can't do, as Kim described, actually manipulate the work because it's all online, and those digital resources just aren't there yet. So, I'm less
She won't go kicking
hesitant.
and screaming. Yeah.
But, I do think we'll likely transition. I mean, having been in schools, it is a colossal effort to just get the hard bound documents and the security and the time and, so I imagine they'll transition us anyway at some point.
Agreed.
But I kind of like that we do it old school for right now. Because that does.
Nothing like the cracking of a sealed test booklet.
But the ability to
The
write and
stuff
show the
nightmares
work,
are
I
made
think,
of.
is super important.
That's right.
Okay, any questions from the committee members on anything that we discussed?
That was great.
Okay.
A lot of information.
Any questions from anybody out there on anything that we've discussed or anything? Okay.
Or anything?
Yeah, that's why, yeah.
Or
Yeah,
anything.
This is the, Mr. G, would you like to speak and talk about something
I
tonight?
would.
I have a
Oh,
question for the
oh,
committee,
sure.
But we'll let Jean talk first.
Okay, thank you.
And Gene, just so you know, we do have like 10 minutes left.
Okay, I'll be fast. I could go for about an hour.
I know you could, that's why I said it, but to be polite.
Well, first of all, I'm here for really one purpose, and that's to talk about civics and U.S. history, K through 12, and where the district is with that curriculum. After the last February meeting, I sent all the board members and administration and Kim an email just expressing my request to seek to understand where we are with that, specifically with that curriculum. I love my country, but I'm fearful and concerned about, we've seen all around us over the last several years, and my sense is, and this isn't specifically about our district, but generally, that there's a crisis in our civics and U.S. history education curriculum around the country. As evidenced by, CRT and, the, 1619 project, that kind of stuff. That's crept into, districts around the country. And for me, just recently, the consequences of that are developing a generation of kids that don't love our country, don't understand our country, don't understand their responsibility of citizenship to be engaged to continue the work of creating a more perfect union. Because it's a work in process. It never gets to an end. We got to keep working at it. But we've got to educate our kids about their responsibilities and love of country and what we're blessed with, but we take for granted, unfortunately. And my Exhibit A showed up this week, or last week. Quinnipiac University, they're polling, they do lots and lots of polling. And last week they came out with a recent poll, and there were a variety of questions they asked, but based on what is happening in the Ukraine, they asked a very specific question. And what's happening in the Ukraine is stunning, both in the war and the brutality, but also how citizens have stepped up to defend their country.
Oh, it's amazing.
It is awe-inspiring.
It is.
To see that. So Quinnipiac, in a larger poll, but they slipped in a question. Okay, if the United States was attacked, would you stay and fight or leave?
Oh.
And I won't go into the political side of this, because there was clearly a political thing going on with how people answered. But what just really upset me is the 18 to 34-year-old age cohort. 48% was split. They wouldn't fight for their country. What that says to me is that whole generation, they haven't been exposed to, the good, the bad, and ugly about our American history, the original intent and our founding principles, and all the things that we have continued to do to make our country a better place, a great place to be, and a great place to defend. And I saw that this past week, and it just, bam. The universities and colleges, and to a degree, and again, I'm not pointing out the district, our district, but nationally, I think we've done a crappy job of teaching kids about the responsibilities and the background of being a citizen. The exams, is there anything about social studies or history or civics, you know? No, there isn't. Not important. Not important. And I feel that it's one of the most important things that we can teach, and we can't take our eye off the ball. All right, with that said, let me get into a couple of real, you know, because I know
Just-
time is short.
With respect.
Some would say it's indoctrination to teach kids to love the country, but the other side is indoctrinating too. So why can't we indoctrinate kids to love the country by educating them about civics and U.S. history? So some questions, and I don't necessarily expect specific answers tonight, but just I would like answers. I reviewed the comprehensive plan, which, the last one, which, you know, I fog over after a while.
It's big.
I'm sure you do too. How does it align and complement the curriculum review cycle? I don't understand how they, because it definitely relates to any changes in K through 12, civics, and U.S. history, how they complement one another. So,
Yeah.
and let me get through my
Sure, oh,
questions,
absolutely.
because
Yeah, I
my
was gonna
time
answer.
is
No problem. Yeah.
real short.
Yeah.
Another question is, and I just have 5 of them,
Okay.
is what impact did the comprehensive plan have, the one we're just finishing, on K through 12 civics and U.S. history? I'd be very interested. Specifically. And Kim and Judy was very kind to suggest I come, and Kim, you were very kind to send me the PA academic standards. So I looked at those standards, and a little footnote, it said, well, the standards are not curriculum. And so it triggered me with, well, is our curriculum aligned with the PA academic standards in government, social studies, civics? This is a hard question. I think the rest of them were easy. Well,
Those were easy.
I'll ask it, I've asked it before, I'm going to ask it again, because I'm a one-trick pony. Is CRT or 1619 project being taught in any way to staff, to students, any piece? Is it being used in any way in this district? And last question, and this is not a question, it's a request. I read someplace in the comprehensive plan about curriculum mapping. Do we have civics and U.S. history mapping? If we do, could I see have access to the 9 through 12 mapping? And those are all my questions and my requests.
No, and thank you. And I know that, you know, that I think that the members of the administration have done a very good job of you know, treating your requests, and I think that you feel the same way, with a seriousness and an openness and a, you know, wanting to have some dialogue to help you out as best as they can within regards to everything else that they're trying to manage and work on as well. So I do appreciate you coming out tonight for everything. I think it is important to talk about civics and stuff like that. I'm sure you know. Former Scoutmaster, Assistant Scoutmaster, my kids are in Scouts, and obviously, you know, we talk about all that stuff there too, and how important it is to be not just, to know the history of your country, good and bad, and I really like that you said that, by the way, but to try to strive to make this place a better country But to do that, you have to be involved. You can't just sit around and complain. You have to know the history, know what didn't work. You know, I could go off, but I appreciate what you said, so thank you.
And Mr. Joel, I wrote down each one of those questions. I do have your contact information, so if I'm not clear, I have your email. Certainly provide an answer and share it with the group. And
Yeah,
then if I
just-
haven't been clear enough, you know, you can always reply and say, I need more there. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much.
Dr. Farina, you had something you wanted to ask real quick?
Well, both committees are present. So Mrs. Bass and I have been talking quite a bit, and I talked to Judy. Now, today's meeting was not one of those, but we were wondering, as committee, as administrators, if there is a possibility we could join these two committees under the umbrella of educational programs and services.
Yeah.
Here. Wow. That was all right, let's go. So the time would still be the same. The
Whoa,
question-
no, I'm just kidding.
Ultimately, we work, all of us, and Caroline are back there, everything we do is interwoven, and sometimes we feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense to talk about them in two different places. So, we would keep that window of time, the same, and we would set one agenda. The conversation with Judy would have to be, what is the composition now of the committee, if it's one? Who's the chair, who are the members? And we would also have to revise the 005 policy, because these two are spelled out. Now, obviously, even if we said, yes, let's do it, we can revise the policy, because literally it's a name change. It still wouldn't take place until the end of the school year, because of the number of reads that have to go into it.
Right.
But we proposed that because we thought, sometimes truthfully, this is our conversation. Do you want to talk about it, or should we talk about it? And so we just thought there would be more,
Yeah.
it would just be more comprehensive and more clear. Special education is part of curriculum instruction and assessment. The programs are, an extension of our core. That's ultimately the way we've always seen it. So I'm throwing it out since I know all committees are here. All committees members are present, so I don't know what your thoughts are.
But we can't really talk about it too much
Nope.
because,
Well, you can move the policy
We would,
for revision.
if we all come to an agreement, then we would have to take it to the full board to then revise the policy.
okay, but
So
should we
it
talk
wouldn't
about
just
the
be
next
our
board
vote.
meeting?
I'm sorry?
Should we talk about it at the next board meeting, though?
You could move the 005 to on the agenda, where I could talk about it.
So this,
It would just be a discussion of it,
Yeah.
and then policy would rewrite it.
right,
Which is just a name.
so having that discussion in this committee, how would this committee feel about a merging of the committees?
As long as we don't dilute either committee, like I would like the importance of this committee and the importance of the items in that committee to still be,
Yeah.
Committee.
they're still both very
I don't
important.
believe it would be able to be accomplished in an hour. It would have to be.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the time is still the same.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I think what it allows, just from my thought, is if curriculum instruction ends early, pupil services can't start. And so, just because we've set up those silos of time, this would allow us to publish an agenda that spans both of our topics, but it could be fluid.
No, I mean, Dana?
Just makes too much sense.
Yeah, like as soon as she said it, I was like, well, yeah, like, because there's so much.
Yeah.
Two different names, but it's
I
all
feel
the
like
same
there's a
stuff.
reason it was probably separated at some point, so I just don't want to lose whatever that is.
Well, I think-
I'm perfectly fine with it and extending the time, if that's the case, I just don't want to take away from curriculum because we're doing that.
So special ed started out as an ad hoc committee.
Yep.
When I took over chair, we expanded special education to include pupil services. So, and then now what they're saying is, hey, in reality, you can't have pupil services and special education without curriculum and instruction. So change the name to educational
All right.
programming.
Yeah, that's fine.
And all of you guys would still be on the committee. We can have, could we have 4 people on the committee? We can't have 5 because that's a quorum.
Correct.
But we can have 4. So, But we can talk about those logistics later,
Okay.
if you're in agreement.
Yeah.
And if
So,
you're not, please, like,
Yeah,
if
no,
you can
please.
think of a really good reason why, no, because that's my
it's-
first concern.
we're all on
I
board.
don't want special ed getting buried, because it's kind of, you know.
I think that's
my
ki-
heart.
I think that's where that other committee came from, because that was, between you and Carrie, those were big drivers of us having that committee be
Right.
separate.
Yeah, it just started as an ad hoc
But-
committee.
But I think at this time, we have a board that's well aware of and interested in it. We have great administrators who are well aware of it and interested in it. Like, I don't think it's gonna get poo-pooed at any time, just based upon what I've seen, so, having been
So
around a while.
I'll hold my committee.
All right.
Well, you have one vote for it. So, we are in agreement that, I don't think we need a formal motion, but all of us are in agreement of revising 005 and moving that to the full committee, or full board. Full board,
For discussion.
for discussion.
Yep.
All right, that being said, any other topics? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.